Scenario 3, developed by Isel within the scope of PAFSE project, is called Noise Pollution and Quality of Life. In relation to the science content from the scenario, the study of noise in its various aspects, such as environmental noise, neighborhood noise, or work noise, the respective physical concepts, and the impact that this problem has on the quality of life, is relevant fundamentally because it is a problem often ignored or disregarded, but can have a great impact on people's lives, such as affecting concentration during work, disturbing a night's sleep, or, in extreme cases, leading to premature death. Studying the noise problem through the analysis of physical parameters of sound, the different noise sources, and the recording of sound measurements by analyzing the respective results in graphs of noise spectrum or power spectral density relating to legislation in force, namely the General Noise Regulation, will make students develop methodologies for analyzing and presenting solutions and arguing, discussing facts about scientific problems, and thus contributing to their interest in subjects related to STEM areas, STEM being science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. The scientific and pedagogical content of the scenario allows teachers and students to explore the problem of different existing types of noises and their relationship with public health, and subsequently the presentation of action measures in their communities to mitigate public health problems arising from noise. And this scenario contains high-level activities based on research, learning objects, interaction with online tools, and updated scientific facts. So, with this scenario, basically, we want students to address the major concept of sound and distinguish this concept of sound from noise because they are two different physical concepts. They study different noise pollution or sources and how they can affect the nowadays the quality of life of the human beings, and to produce several measures that can be taken at in the individual and community levels to mitigate such problems, such public health issues arising from noise. So this is the main goal within this scenario. In terms of context, the scenario raises awareness among students and the school community about the problem of noise and its impact on people's quality of life, helping to combat this problem by contributing to a more sustainable lifestyle. This scenario will allow teachers to address simultaneously in an interactive and scientific way the problem of noise through a tool that supports the upload of audio files and displays noise spectrograms. So, in this case, students will have an activity where they will be taking the sound measurements around the school facilities, and then they will download or upload these audio recordings to a tool that will display noise spectrograms where students could analyze frequency analysis over time. And the tool will um, make the students see the public health issues associated with each frequency band range and exposure time. Those aspects can be identified with this tool. So the learning scenario increases students' understanding about the phenomenon of noise, the associated physical concepts, the handling reading of sound measuring instruments, and how STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics can contribute to anticipate, mitigate, and solve threats to public health, in this case, the case of this specific scenario, due to noise in its various contexts. So, the main learning objectives that we want that students achieve at the end of the scenarios are the students' ability to use computational tool to plot tables, graphics, or other data that enables sound measurement and noise characterization. We also want that students obtain evaluate and communicate scientific data and facts related with impacts of noise exposure on wildlife and human health. We also want that students use scientific facts to build argumentation about the impacts of noise on community health and give, for example, examples of source of noises that affect community health and quality of life. And we will also want to capacitate students to propose measures or actions to combat noise and communicates them to the school community and alike. So basically in PAFSE project we have several learning resources, materials that compose these structured activities that we have developed for each scenario, and we categorize those learning resources with the following categorization. Digital learning objects are tools or resources within the PAFS project, and specifically in this scenario that were specifically created within the scope of the scenario. So are all the documents in, for example, worksheets, the learning guides, all the aspects, all the documents that we produce specifically for the meanings of this project. And other category of resources that integrate this project are called educational resources. And these are all the scientific information, documents, images, videos, among others, that we collected from other sources to help complete and make the project the best way, the most informative that it could be. So that students will interact during the research that they will carry out through the classes on different research activities. So these are all the documents that students will find that we have at their disposal to analyze documents, images, graphics, all the documents that we collected from other sources and that students will collect from other sources to complement their work. Those are called educational resources. And finally, we have a school research project which will allow students to explore measures to be taken at their school to mitigate public health issues in relation to the noise problem. In terms of class planning, we have at the beginning of class 1 a reserve of time for the teacher to introduce the scenario, the path scenario, and what the students will be doing in the next classes. And then we will start addressing the work, the scenario, by studying the concept of sound and noise and the distinguish between those two physical concepts. And this will be the main focus on class 1. Then on class 2, having students already establish a difference between noise and sound, we'll study noise in more depth. In this case, they will analyze and research about noise pollution sources, types of exposure, and public health impacts arising from noise pollution, and then having studied in theory the noise and the physical parameters that characterize noise and sound, they will develop a practical activity of sound and noise measurements where they will have to conduct a sound measurement activity where they will each group of the class will have to record sound measurements in different places of their school environment to be able to then in class 4 analyze and collect, treat the data, so to speak, of the analysis of sound and noise measurements that they made in class 3. They will identify, for example, in terms of a sound intensity, which sounds can they that they measure can be considered noise pollutions, which are not noise pollution, the main reasons why they achieve those results. All of that will be discussed in class 4 when they treat the data they collected in class 3. And then in class 5, it will be conducted a presentation and debate of the conclusions obtained from the activities of the previous classes and students will identify measures and behavior to be adopted to reduce noise production and thus improve public health. So students will debate, each group will debate the noise measurements they record in classes 3, the main and the main issues and facts that they discover by treating the data in class 4 regarding public health issues arising from noise pollution, and a debate will be generated in this class 5, where students will start to suggest some measures to be taken both individually and at the community wise to mitigate noise pollution in, for example, their school environment. And then in class 6, it will be a follow up of the previous class, and the presentation of the school research project will take place in this class. And of course, at the end of the project, we will have the school research project that will be addressed in this video later. So, in terms of scenario structure, the scenario consists of 6 classes of 40 to 45 minutes and a variable number of extra sessions for students to develop their school research project. 4 to 6 sessions can be more, can be less, all those sessions to complete the scenario are dependent on the teacher's constraints. For example, the students' prior knowledge, the school curriculum, the time constraints. So all those aspects can influence the time that the scenario can be developed. We can see the scenario to consist of 6 classes, but teacher can implement the scenario in less classes, more classes, can only use some parts of the scenario for their classes. So this will be at the teacher's decision what time the scenario implementation will take place. Then, from classes 1 to 6, students should work alone or in groups, depending on the activity. This will be also at the teacher's decision. And to carry out the school research project, students should be divided in here in groups of 4 to 5. And it will be also necessary students to be available to use computers or smartphones and have basic knowledge of Word or PowerPoint, as well as basic knowledge of English. So, in terms of class 1, in this class, the project is presented to students and the concepts of sound and noise are explored, and they will analyze the different physical parameters that characterize these two concepts, as well as their respective definitions. So, the concepts of frequency, period, range, sound intensity, among others, will be developed so that students can identify sound and noise and distinguish those two physical concepts. As you see in this slide, we have at the introduction of each class a blue board, where we have the main objectives to achieve in each class from the student's perspective. And in this case, these objectives are to be accomplished throughout all the classes. We just have here defined some of the main objectives to achieve in each class, so the professor or the teacher that will implement the scenario can have a guideline of what is intended in class one, in the several classes. So in activity 1 of the class 1, the professor begins by explaining to the students the objectives and the planning of the next lessons, similarly to what is found in slides 4 to 10. So the following topics are covered in this activity. So the teacher should mention to their students that they will analyze problems related to noise exposure through a research work of science-based information, and the concept of noise, standards, recommendation limits, sources of noise, how to measure noise will be studied. They will describe different sources of noise and will identify those most harmful to human health through science-based data and information research. They will discuss in the classroom environment the main causes and consequences of noise pollution at different levels. They will analyze and discuss real cases of noise through the recording of sounds inside the classroom and in the school using an audio record application or an acoustic meter, and they will characterize the noises recorded regarding their impact on public health, and they will find solutions to mitigate the identified problems based on research and practical activities carried out previously in class, considering the consequences of noise or public health. And then in activity 2, before starting the activities directly related to the scenario, because it will be important for the students in the subsequent classes when filling out the worksheets proposed for the scenario, the teacher, after presenting the PAFSE project to the students, addresses the process of how to search for credible information when carrying out a research work. So for this purpose, a PowerPoint presentation was created entitled Tutorial How to Write and Read a Scientific Document, which the teacher uses to explain to students how a scientific document is created and how we can read and analyze this so-called document. So basically, this PowerPoint presentation is divided in two parts. The first one exposes the sequence of how to read and analyze a scientific document, as well as to focus on useful information, and the second part intends to convey to students step by step on how to build a scientific document from scratch. To begin, now in activity 3, to begin the implementation of the scenario, the teacher begins by addressing with the class the concepts of sound and noise and the respective distinction between those two physical concepts. So the teacher also addresses some of the physical parameters that are used to characterize sound and noise. And as this activity should involve the direct participation of students, the teacher promotes a brainstorming activity with the class on the subject in question. So, some questions are being suggested in this slide, but other questions that the teacher feels more adequate can be also made to the students. So, some suggestions to address to address this theme of this class are: can you provide a definition of sound or noise? What are the differences between these two parameters? In physics, what parameters are used to characterize sound? What does each parameter allow you to analyze? So, these questions and others should be introduced to students at the beginning of the class, and after collecting the students' initial impressions of these questions, the teachers proposes that the students answer these questions based on scientific argumentation and proposals to the class that they carry out and proposes to the class that they carry out an investigation activity on the concepts addressed in questions 1, 2, and 3. So, teacher initially collects the initial ideas of students about these questions, and then suggests the students to conduct a research activity to answer the questions from 1 to 3. For this purpose, the teacher should divide the class in groups of 4 to 5 and distribute for each group the proposed worksheet for this class. And basically, the worksheet consists of 3 questions in each, in which in the first question the students must carry out an autonomous research activity on the concepts of sound and noise and should identify the differences between the two concepts. In the second question, they have an interactive challenge where they must complete the blank spaces with the correct options in a summary referring to the main characteristics of sound. In the last question, students must identify what parameters they are analyzing in the observed graphs and regarding the worksheet. And this worksheet, as the worksheets for the next classes, also have this note. It will be possible at the worksheet to see a section named "To Learn More," where the students will have a table where several keywords are identified with their corresponding bibliographic reference number. And below the table are the access links to each of the references mentioned. So, for instance, we want, for example, in class 1 that students conduct a research activity to define the physical concept of sound. They will have in this table a keyword, for example, named sound, and they will have below some links where they can access through that keyword um, information, the scientific information that will help students answer these questions. So this table, this section to learn more will be available at each worksheet of this scenario regarding several keywords for the worksheet being developed in each class. And also, uh, this for this worksheet is also available for the other worksheets. We will have a possible solution for this worksheet, so the answers for this worksheet will be available in a possible worksheet solution, and this will be also available for the worksheets of the next classes, as we will see in this video. And we will also want to address some advices, some counsels to a professor to have in mind to be able to accomplish the proposed time limit for the class, which is 40 to 45 minutes. So such aspects, for example, in terms of logistics, like the necessary and the mandatory for students to have access to internet to access the links provided on the form, either through computers or their smartphones, the fact that the classroom should be prepared and the tables should be arranged for group work before the students come in. If computers will be used, a prior survey of the need for electrical power sockets should be done. All these aspects that we suggest that the teacher accomplishes before implementing the scenario will dynamize the activity and will help immensely to accomplish the proposed time limit for the class. So we will also want to give you this heads up. So these were the activities that we had defined for class 1, and then having students already study the concept of noise in class 2, we want that students study and address the different sources of noise, types of exposure, and public health impacts related to noise exposure. So all those aspects are intended for students to address in class 2. So, in activity 1, the teacher should explore the level of impact on public health of each noise source, and noting that to carry out this classification, it is necessary to characterize the physical parameter of noise based on other parameters such as sound levels, type of noise, broadband, tonal or impulsive, timbre, or the phenomenon of propagation of sound waves. So to be able to characterize the impact or the harmful impact of sound, of noise sources, we have to study other physical parameters that characterize a noise impact on human beings, and those are sound levels, tonal, impulsive, timbre, etc., etc. And following up, a relationship should be established between the level quantification of these parameters and the possible risks to public health and quality of life. For example, long periods of exposure to high intensity noise can cause problems such as progressive hearing loss. So, an establishment between the quantification of these parameters and the public health risks associated to noise pollution should be also addressed in this class. So, as a class should involve the direct participation of students, the same MO of class 1 should be used in class 2. So, a brainstorming activity in the beginning of this class should be point out with the students where some questions and others that we can see here at this slide should be made to students to introduce the main theme of this class. So, such questions could be, for example, what kind of noise sources can you identify? The noise sources all have the same impact on people's health. What public health impacts can occur due to noise? So, those questions and other that the professor or teacher feels adequate could be point out to the students. And after collecting the students' initial impressions of these questions, the teacher proposes that the students answer them by completing the worksheet for this activity. So they will also have to be divided in groups. The worksheet should be distributed to the students, and basically, this worksheet consists of two questions, where in the first one the students have a series of images representative of various noise sources in a urban environment and must identify the source of noise pollution in each image, the respective sound intensity. To answer the last question, students will need to carry out a small research activity to obtain these values. In said question, students have a crossword puzzle where, based on the clues provided, they identify some of the public health problems resulting directly or indirectly from noise in urban areas. As already mentioned, a possible worksheet solution for this worksheet is also available. An important note is also addressed in this slide. So we counsel the same advice that teacher accomplishes in to accomplish the proposed time limit for this class. So the classroom should be prepared. The students should have access to internet. So basically, these are the same advices that we are giving in class 1, so that the activity proposed in class 2 should be dynamized and the proposed time limit should be respected. So, in classes 1 and 2, students already have studied in theory what physical aspects are associated with noise, what physical parameters can characterize noise, the distinguish between the physical concept of noise and sound, and then in class 3, the students will have a practical activity of sound and noise measurement where each group will perform a series of sound and noise measurements within the school space. So they will have a application that does the sound recording, which is called Decibel Sheesh, which allows highly reliable and accurate sound measurements. So students will use this application, Decibel Sheesh, to perform several sound measurements around the school environment. So, it is recommended that all students in each group have the application downloaded to their smartphones so that as many measurements as possible can be made by each group. So, with more students having this application, more sound measurements can be done within each group. The app Decibel X can be downloaded on smartphones for both the Google Play Store and Apple Store, and the links to obtain the applications are those two we are seeing in. Then you can access these links and download this application. And basically, we developed a learning guide for both teachers and students, explaining all the features of the application and how it is intended, in particular, that students use the application. So we developed a learning guide with vocabulary for teachers and other learning guide with vocabulary for students, explaining all the main features of the application and the several step-by-step um, stages that students should conduct to perform the sound measurements. And briefly, the application allows the recording of two sound measurements by smartphone, because for more than two measurements it would be necessary to have the premium version, and that's why we ask that we recommend that each students of each group as the application installed on that smartphone because more sound measurements could be done in that way. And the application itself generates a report of the audio record with the main parameters of the measurement, such as the frequency internal obtained, the sound intensities, the minimum, maximum, peak, average intensity, among other aspects. And then so the application generates a report of the audio record, and this report can be converted into an HTML file and later sent to an email where, in this case, students will have access to detailed information about the measurements they have taken, which will be useful in subsequent classes. All the steps that are necessary to perform, starting with the creation of HTML file to its sending to the email, are described in the learning guides for both teachers and students. So the several steps explaining how the application works, its main features, how to generate this HTML file, how to send it to email, all those aspects are described in the learning guides. So in here we can see an image of the logo of the Decibel X application. We can see the main default of the desktop default of the Decibel X application in the second image. In the third image, we can see what will be shown to the students when they finish recording a sound measurement, and in the fourth image, we can see what the report has in terms of information and the graphic, as we can see at the below image that the report that the application produces, and all this information is, like I said, available at the learning guides. And with the completion of the sound measurement activities, students are then challenged to apply the knowledge they learned in the previous classes to be able to read the results of sound measurements, and that is, they will have to analyze the values obtained from frequencies, sound intensities, among others, and through these values, perceive in each context where the measurements were made and if it corresponds to noise and with why such a phenomenon occurred. So they will record, so students will record these sound measurements in different environments in the school, in different places, and then they will have to identify by reading the frequencies, the sound intensities they register, which noise measures or sound measurements are considered to be noise and why such phenomena occur. And to carry out this activity, the teacher should divide the students in groups of 4 to 5 students, and preferably the groups formed in the previous classes, and distributes the worksheet corresponding to class 3. And this worksheet consists only of a table with recording the value where students can record and register the values of the main parameters obtained in each measurement, and those will be the minimum, maximum and peak sound intensity, the average intensity, basically the main parameters that the sound recording tool allows to be recorded in each sound measurement. Each student in each group makes two recordings. The two recordings that it has already been mentioned in this video, and they should save the recordings with the name of the place where the measurement was taken, and simultaneously they fill in the worksheet with the required parameters. And at the end of the class, students create the reports in the HTML files and send them to the email that the teacher indicates. It is also recommended that the groups take measurements in different locations so that the discussion about the results obtained in subsequent classes is richer and more challenging for students, in order to challenge them to try to understand the differences and or the similarities between the recorded values. At this time of the class, the help of the ICT teacher may be important to assist transferring these files to the emails that the teacher indicates. So it will be useful to the teacher that will be implementing this scenario to talk prior to class 3 with the ICT teacher so that he can help students to transfer these files to the email that the teacher indicates. And also in this class we have some advices to teacher for the teacher to accomplish so that the proposed time limit of this class is respected. And we have to take in account that in this class students will be taking out of the class. They will be circulating around the school environment. So in all of those aspects that I previously discussed should be accomplished in 40 to 45 minutes. So, for example, it is absolutely necessary that the students, before entering the classroom, have the application already installed on their mobile phone and have taken a test measurement to clarify any doubts at the beginning of the class. So, this is really mandatory. The students, before they entering the classroom, they already need to have the application already installed on their mobile phone and have taken a measurement test so that they have some doubt they can clarify it on the beginning of the class. And it is also absolutely imperative that students have already read the learning script before class 3 so that the practical activities run as smoothly as possible. So the students should already before class 3 they should already have learned and read the learning script where it is described the step-by-step activity that students will have to accomplish to conclude this class. And it is also recommended that at the beginning of the class, the teacher resolves a small space to answer some of the questions that may arise, for example, for some doubts that the students uh, encounter when reading the learning script. So this is also recommended, and it is also recommended that the teacher sets aside a little time for the end of the class for students to manage the reports in the classroom and send them to the indicated email. And it is also recommended that reports should be sent to the teacher's email to avoid any mishaps regarding involuntary deletions of cell phone recordings. So, for example, students uh, inadvertently can delete the sound recordings in the interval between class 3 and class 4, and to prevent that the students have no data. Of course they will have the worksheet where where they fill the main characteristics associated to the sound measurements, but the teacher should guarantee that she should receive all the reports by email for all the groups. So these were the activities that we defined for class 3, and in class 4 we want the students to analyze the results of sound and noise measurements made in class 3. And basically in this class students analyze the results of the measurements they made in the previous class using the reports they obtained for each measurement and the data from the recording that they are present in the application. Simultaneously, the teacher distributes the worksheet proposed for this class that will assist in the analysis of the results. It is intended with this activity that students, in first instance, identify which of the measurements they have taken are noise, the reason why they consider the noise to have occurred, and subsequently identify the main public health risks associated with noise in that situation, justifying their response accordingly. With this activity, critical and argumentative thinking is promoted, incorporating this activity as one of the stages of STEM work, data analysis, and processing. So these are two the main activities when we conduct work in the fields of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. We record the measurements and then we have to treat the data and process it, and this is exactly what students will be doing in class 4. And to carry out these activities, students will also have to consider the knowledge obtained in the previous classes, so they will have to have in mind the physical parameters they analyze and study that can help characterize sound, so frequency, sound intensity, all those aspects will have to come at these analysis in class 4, so they can be able to analyze which sound measurements are noise, and to justify why those measurements are effectively noise. And we will also have some advices to give to professors to compose and to accomplish the proposed time limit for the class. So, due to the possibilities that not all students have computers, it is important that the teacher keeps the reports of the measurements of each group at the end of class 3 to be able to provide the reports on paper or to the computer of one of the elements of the group in class 4. And this is important because of such aspect. And it is absolutely necessary for students to have access to the internet in order to access the links provided on the form, either through computers or through their smartphones. And the other two notes, the classroom should be prepared and the tables should be arranged, and the electrical power sockets evaluation should be done. Those two aspects were already mentioned with the advices for the other classes. So all these aspects should be thoroughly considered by the professor in order to compose and accomplish the proposed time limit for the class. So these were the activities defined for class 4, and then in class 5 the students should present the resolution of the worksheets for classes 1 and 2 and develop of a debate based on the noise measurements in the data they analyzed in class 4, based on the evidence that verified in all those aspects, to discuss the impacts of noise sources on public health and what general actions can be taken to avoid mitigate the problem. So this will be the main theme of class 5. Students will debate what conclusions they arrived with the performing of the sound measurements and the theoretical aspects they studied in the first classes of this scenario. And so, at the beginning of this class, each group should present their worksheets answers from classes 1 to 3, and the time limit is established per group, and it is mandatory that each element of each group talks at least one to present their worksheet answers. Why? Because one of the main objectives of the PAFSE project, it is also to develop soft skills like the possibility, the capability of students ability of students to be able to communicate and address scientific issues to other people, to their community. And this is why we specify that it is mandatory that each element of each group talks at least once. While a group is presenting, the teacher tells the other groups to write down the main differences between the answers they gave and those from the group that is presenting, and this construct of ideas will be a starting point for the debate that will be held subsequently. In this activity, a debate is developed in the class in which, in the first instance, the different points of view among the students are discussed in relation to the answers of the forms, and in the second moment of the debate, it is intended that students debate and produce conclusions on the theme how to reduce noise in urban environments, considering the various problems that this subject entails for public health and the various solutions that can be implemented to mitigate the problem both at an individual level and at the community level. So, to address the first part of the debate, the teacher can ask the class a series of questions which the students will have to answer, arguing with the answers they delivered in the worksheet and with the conclusions from sound measurement practical activity. Such questions may be, and more questions may be raised if the professor feels adequate, should be, for example, considering what you have studied, What are the sources of noise that you think bring more problems to public health? What parameters do we analyze to be able to identify the noise severity level? Can the problems for public health due to noise impact our daily lives, or are they things that do not have great importance? Why do you think that? These questions and other questions can be made to students in order to address the first part of the debate, and in the second part of the debate, other questions can be addressed in the terms of the practical activity of the sound measurement, and those questions can be, for example, in which places of the school did you find highest noise levels? Why do you think that happened? What constraints can the noise bring about in the place of the school where it was identified? What steps would you individually take to reduce the noise in your space? Do you think awareness raising actions in the community on this topic are important? Why is that? So, these questions and other questions that the professor feels adequate can be pointed out to students to address the second part of the debate. And for the debate to be conducted effectively, the teacher presents and guarantees compliance with the rules defined. And the proposed rules for the debate to be conducted effectively are as follows. So the main focus of the debate is to use scientific argumentation to discuss the different points of view on what the groups answer on the worksheets and on general measurements that students would choose to reduce noise in urban environments. So this will be the two main focuses of the debate. And they will need to bear in mind that the mitigating of public health problems arising is the main goal with these activities. So students should use the knowledge acquired in the last classes to formulate these proposals to mitigate noise pollution in their community. To carry out the debate, the teacher should divide the students into groups of 4 to 5, and each group is given a time to communicate a set of proposals on reducing noise in urban environment. Each member of each group must speak at least once, and the order and the content of the intervention is previously discussed by the group members. After each group presents its measures, the other groups present their counter arguments. Then, the group which just presented is given a time to counter these counter arguments. In the presentation of counter arguments to the proposals presented, my colleagues must be made by only one member of each group, indicated by the teams, and if the other groups agree with the arguments of the group that has just presented, they must present at least one suggestion or recommendation to the measures that were mentioned by the group that has just presented. And we suggest some debate evaluation criteria that the teacher can use to evaluate the debate, and this would be the group that submitted the best proposal, the group that best defended their point of view, the group that best refuted the arguments of the other groups, and to also help the students streamline their reasoning and the organization of their ideas, they will be given a worksheet where there is a space to indicate the measures they consider most appropriate in another area where they identify the arguments that justify their selections. And in class 6, the teacher completes the activities of the previous class, so some period of time is reserved for activity 1 of class 6 to accomplish all the activities proposed in class 5, and the school research project, the results of which are presented in the school, should be addressed. So, in activity 2, so for activity 1 is reserved to accomplish to finalize the activities of class 5, and in the second activity of class 6, the teacher uses the PowerPoint presentation entitled School Project How to Make a Poster to present the school research project to the class. So each group in this school research project is challenged to create a poster that contains images, text, infographic, etc., with the conclusions drawn from the analysis of the worksheets, the practical activities of sign measurements, and the analysis of results. So students are encouraged to revisit the scientific articles they have consulted in the research process, to refer to the concepts of sound and noise and the main differences between both concepts. So what physical parameters are used to characterize sound and noise in their definitions, what problems for public health arise due to noise pollution sources, and they can also make a short description of the practical activity of sound measurements and mention the main results. All of those aspects should be considered in the school research project. The best format for the presentation of the project should be also discussed in this class. And basically, this PowerPoint also contains some examples of successful posters as well as the main guidelines to follow to create a good poster. So this document also contains explanation of the general objectives of the school research project as well as a tutorial that students can follow to set up a PowerPoint slide in the dimension for which the poster will need to be created. To complete the implementation of the project, the teacher has also at his disposal a summative evaluation that summarizes or somewhat consolidates the knowledge acquired through scenario 3. In this case, the teacher will have a summative, the teacher can use this worksheet, this summative evaluation worksheet, to evaluate what students accomplish with the development of this scenario. And this worksheet, like all the others, contains a version with the answer. And to address specifically to the school research project, as it was mentioned, based on the knowledge acquired in the previous classes and following the scientific methods, the groups should make observation in the school's environment and, for example, identify a series of measures to be adopted by the school community to reduce noise. So during the development of the project, students made observation and identified an overview of the school community behavior in relation to noise pollution. And then teacher discusses with the students possible aspects to evaluate regarding the school's infrastructure and regarding the topic of noise and possible issues to evaluate the school's attributes and the advantages and limitations of the school should be discussed. The results of the project will be a survey of the conditions present by the school to implement these measures, and this survey and these measures should be taken in the form of a poster. And proposals should be related to the benefits that behavioral changes may bring to the health and well-being of the school community. So when students address these measures, they also should justify why they think those measures can benefit the school community in terms of reducing noise pollution. So the project should be carried out in the same groups that developed the several activities in the scenario, and this project should also be multidisciplinary. That is, not only the coordinator professor of the project should be in the project, but in the school research project, but other teachers, for example, arts teacher, to help the designing creativity of the scientific poster, and the ICT teacher can help students develop the scientific presentation in the PowerPoint, and for example, Portuguese and English teachers can help in the proofreading of teachers of texts produced in both outputs. All those teachers should be involved also in the project to make this project as most complete as possible, so we will have the best project possible.